Okay, Geography 142, Chapter 3, Part 2. The book talks about a theory of population distribution called the demographic transition model. And this is a theoretical model that helps people understand how populations change, the total number of people over time related to industrialization and some of the other demographics like birth rate and death rate. So I really want you to be able to explain the different stages of this model. So we have four stages of development, and this is the number of number of births and deaths per year, and this is over time, or the development from pre-industrial to post-industrial. And so what you see in a stage 1 population is that they have very high death rates. They also have very high birth rates, but the population, or this space in between the red and the blue lines, is not very large, and it's very stable population because the deaths and the births kind of equalize each other. As a country moves into stage 2, or the beginning of industrialization, you began to see a rapid decline in the death rate. The birth rate stays relatively high, however, so you end up with a very huge population explosion. Part of the death rate declines because of increased sanitation, increased medical ability. However, people's desire to have children, or the idea of a birth rate, that has a much stronger cultural tie, and so people don't often change their ideas of family size very easily. And so you get to see these high birth rates stay, and the death rate plummet. Over time, as a country or an area moves into a stage 3 of development, you'll see that the birth rate starts to plummet, the death rate continues to decline, and the population begins to decrease. One of the things that happens here is you begin to have education for women. Once women become educated, family size tends to go down, the use of contraceptives increases, and women working outside the home tends to be more common. And so with that stage 3 development, you get the decreased birth rate. And then a stage 4 development is post-industrial. You begin to see the birth rate less than the death rate. So countries in a stage 4 tend to not be at replacement. And this has its own set of issues. And as you'll read in the text and see in the video, when you have a country that's not at replacement, you have a very high health costs for elderly people. You have not as many workers in a community. You have a lot of young people supporting more old people. So the demographic transition model can be looked at in this graph, or we can also look at it with population pyramids. And I'm going to skip to that and then come back to this slide. A population pyramid is a graph that shows male population on one side, female population on the other, and age ranges as you go up the y-axis. So here is a population pyramid, and it's showing that there are a fairly even number of males and females up until about the age 20, and then you get to see a decrease in the number of people. So there aren't very many people in their 80s and 90s, lots of people in their 15 to 20, and pretty even representation between male and female, except as you get up from 40 and older, you tend to have older females, are more females than males. This is just a great population pyramid from Sun City, Arizona. And this is what I was talking about when you get a country in a stage 4 where you have a very heavy or a large number of older people and very few young people supporting them. This is kind of in an extreme. But when you think about the working age being from the 20s to the 60s, there's not a lot of income being generated in Sun City to support this elderly population. This is another population pyramid that I love, showing the extreme numbers of people at a college town. So you can see that the population pyramid is pretty evenly balanced until you get here in the males in Lawrence, Kansas. Lots of elderly males dying off, more elderly females, and you see this high spike of college-age people. This is a population pyramid, Indonesia in 2005, and what you see here is a country that's probably in a stage 2 of the demographic transition model. So they have a lot of children, but they also have this huge expansion of population, because in a stage 1 you would have a very steep triangle where these people are dying off. So we can look at the population pyramids in a very generalized way, where you have stage 1 through stage 4, and a stage 1 where your population is stable, your males and females are pretty even, and you have fewer people at the top and lots of young people at the bottom of your pyramid. In a stage 2, if you begin to really see this population explosion as the people are living longer. A stage 3, you began to see a little bit of lessening at the bottom of the pyramid, bulging as the population gets older, and a stage 4 you would see more of an inverted pyramid. Here's an example of and I drew these by freehand, so they're all wobbly, so you're going to have to kind of use your imagination. But here's a pyramid that might show some kind of stress on a population, and for this pyramid the stress was mainly on the male population, and so here's an example of, it's probably a stage 1 or early stage 2 population, and something has happened at the young males from ages 20 to 40, where that's been a huge decrease in the male population. And this might be common in the event of some kind of conflict or war. You might see population change like that. The book talks a lot about using population pyramids to understand age demographics and gender ratio, and so here's a little map from Wikipedia showing countries with more females than males. Countries with the same number are green, and countries with a lot more males than females. And typically in most countries you end up with a few more women than men. Women tend to have, or historically have had, live longer than males, although in the US and other industrialized countries that's beginning to change as women begin to get more lifestyle diseases as well. But it's really interesting that you have more males than females in this area. It'd be curious to see how many more and if it's a significant number. The book talks a little bit about migration. The idea that there are push and pull factors that cause people to move, and for most people the push factors are much more powerful than the pull factors. So people move because of environmental damage to an area or environmental risk. There might be flooding, there might be earthquakes, and people need to relocate. People move for economic reasons. People move because of war or conflict. And then the pull happens as where do you want to go? So for the example in the quiz on the first week, we talked about Bolivia having a lower HDI, and so that would be the push, maybe economic or a low life expectancy, and the pull would be to Chile or Argentina because they have a higher standard of living, and so people would want to move somewhere where there's a connection. And when we talk about ethnicity in a couple weeks, or maybe next week, we'll talk about some of the factors that cause that pull. There's a difference between a refugee and an immigrant. Refugees are a special case of immigrant, and these are people who move often with only the clothes on their back. They don't have papers, they don't have documentation, and often they're moving because their lives are at risk. And there's a special case of from the UNHCR that define refugees. There's a little bit of talk in the book about environmental alterations as a result of population or due to population landscapes, typically urbanization. The world is becoming more and more urbanized. The people are moving into cities, and that often creates dramatic stresses on city infrastructure. And we'll talk, as I said, more about that when we talk about urbanization. Some of the landscapes of urbanization are shanty towns, are barrios, very temporary, unplanned villages. So for this section, I want you to be able to look at the density centers and compare and talk about the density centers and how that relates to the HDI, and what is the correlation between HDI and birth rate? Are densely populated places, do they also have low human development? Can you use density as a predictor of HDI? This would be a question I would ask on an exam. The second concept is to look at the fertility rate, and then look at these rates from the World Factbook, and then be able to talk about our countries. Are they at capacity, or are they at replacement, or are they under replacement? And then I have two maps, one showing the total fertility rate by state in 2003, and then teen pregnancy rates or teen birth rates. And I wanted you to be able to kind of look at these two maps and what do you think might account for some of the regional variation. So here the West Coast and the northern part of the country has some of the lowest birth rates. And that seems to correlate a little bit with the fertility rate. So I want you really to be able to look at these maps and talk about how this information can be used. And then finally, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. That's a little too big. Hold on a sec. Clean that one up. Look at the map on 3.3. Where would you place the core if you were going to create a formal geographic region or a formal region of fertility rate? Where would you put that in the world? Where would the high fertility rate be? In the demographic transition, I want you to be able to talk about why stage 1 populations are stable. What kinds of cultures, think about the studies you did in chapter 2, might be at that stage. And then look at stage 2. What are the traits of a stage 2? Why is that population growing? What's causing the death rate to decline? Why is the birth rate not declining until stage 4? And then based on these maps of total fertility rate and HDI, there's the I goes right there, and birth control in that figure that I gave you, what stages do you think these countries are in? And you may need to look at several maps to be able to identify what stage you would think each of those countries in the demographic transition. Number 5, look at the population pyramid for Sun City, Arizona. And what does this tell you about that community? Make sure you could discuss all of those population pyramids. You know, what are people going to need to do? How is that pyramid going to impact their city structure? Look at the population pyramid for Tanzania. What do you know about that population? What stages are they in according to the demographic transition model? And number 7, both China and India have attempted to control their population. How have they implemented those controls? And then most importantly, what are some of the unintended consequences? What are the outcomes from in today's world for that population control?